Hello, ladies! Thank you for being with us this day, and thank God that meron tayong opportunity like this to talk about an issue that's close to everybody else's heart. Kamusta kayo? Handa na ba kayo sa mga pag-uusapan natin this afternoon? Magiging puso sa puso tayo, and I'm gonna tell you right away that I'm gonna be blunt sa mga pag-uusapan natin ngayon. By the way, ako nga pala si Shamira and I am a member of Capital City Baptist Church. And what we're going to discuss is something that is very dear to my heart. So, yeah, brace yourselves. Itong issue na to is not really talked about properly that much. I mean, hindi naman sa wala. Pero usually, when this comes into discussion, it would usually be in jest. So, sasabihin ng mga tao, oh, kailan ka magkaka-boyfriend? Kailan mo siya papakilala sa amin? Or, it would be hidden behind some sort of condescension or contempt. Sabi niya, kaya ka single eh. Ang dami mo kasing insert, whatever. Or, yung iba naman, dahil sa awa, they would say, paano yan? Kapag matanda ka na, walang mag-aalaga sa'yo or whatever. Or, kung di naman sa mga yon, may halong pagkainggit, pangasar sometimes, or pangmamataas, unintentionally and intentionally. Sabihin nila, sarap talagang may asawa, wink-wink, ganon, towards you. So, minsan naman, hindi mo na kailangan na marinig to mga to because our own voices do this to us. And we think, ano na po, Lord? Well, medyo malapit na po ako lumampas sa kalendaryo, pero parang wala pa rin nagpaparamdam At yung mga gusto ko, nasa relationship na. Or, kung hindi naman ganon, sabihin natin ka, Lord, Lord, akala ko po ba concerned kayo sa mga bagay na concerned ko? Pero bakit parang sinagot mo na yata lahat ng ibang prayer items ko, ito na lang yung hindi mo pa sinasagot? Or, yung iba naman sasabihin, patulan ko ba siya, Lord? Kahit hindi siya yung tama? Wala na parang, eto na parang siya na yung dumaan. Or, some people would pray, bakit po kaya siya, some person, nagkaroon na ng relationship, pero ako, ang dami ko nang ginawa, consistent naman ako sa prayer times ko and Bible study. Nagdi-disciple naman ako. Ginawa ko naman lahat para sa'yo. Hindi ako nag-compromise ng purity ko at lahat-lahat na. Pero bakit parang wala talaga? And sadly, sometimes, iba yung kinahahantungan nung ganong mga thoughts natin. Dumating tayo sa point na parang yung iba tatanong, Lord, ang pangit ko ba? Ano bang mali sa akin? Or, how can I be better? How can this person find me beautiful as well? Marami pa actually, di ba? I might not have been able to utter each and every thought and word that we have ever thought and prayed for, and even continue to do so, pero that doesn't make them any less true and valid. And I hear you, my dear sisters. Marami pang dapat pag-usapan. Pero a lot of times, the words that we've heard coming from people regarding what the scripture said about singlehood did not really extend much beyond yung sasabihin nila na Jesus is enough, or our joy really is in the Lord, or maghintay lang tayo para sa sagot ni Lord para sa'yo. Well-meaning Christians would say that. Pero typically, when they say, hintay natin yung sagot na yon is yung future husband pa rin. Kaya, I really want to speak on this matter. And I believe that it's high time that we face this issue, because the reality is that what you're facing right now, it will be a bigger thing for the next generations more than what the previous generations encountered. Kung dati, konti lang yung mga matatandang dalaga at binata in our circles, ngayon, because of everything that's happening in our individual lives and in the rest of the world as well, mas marami na tayong aalagaan at makakasamang mga single and unmarried. And baka nga kasama tayo dun sa association na yun in the not so distant future, di ba? And the thing is, most of our pastors or teachers or trainers or nilulook up to na models, they have not experienced this sort of prolonged singleness and what it's like to have that sort of season in life. And when I mean singleness, I mean no relationship at all kind of singleness. And naturally, because ganun yung experiences nila, inevitably, hindi ito yung masyadong napupuntahan na topic at kung mapuntahan man, hindi ito masyadong nahihimay. And in fact, itong talk na ito is sobrang kulang, feeling ko, introduction pa nga lang ito sa conversation na dapat na nangyayari sa atin eh. Like you, my dears, facing singlehood used to be a deep struggle of mine. And like many of you, ang dami ko nang nabasang books and theological articles, pinakinggang sermon, minemorize na verses, kinausap na mature and faithful, prayerful na Christians. Marami na rin akong nasulat na tula, spoken poetry, nasulat na journal entries, iniyak na luha at na-lose na sleep over this. Pero in everything, sa lahat ng yon, wala akong masyadong nahanap na sagot, na swak talaga sa mga questions ko. Usually, ang babalikan ko lang is that, go back to Jesus. And when I go down that route, ang nakikita ko most of the times is that, I should just focus on finishing the Great Commission, focus on Jesus Christ. Pero what it gave me at that time was this feeling that Jesus was only concerned about me taking part in fulfilling the Great Commission, me fulfilling the job that He has for me, and not really about me as a person and the questions that I've dealt with in terms of this chronic heartbreak. Pero deep within my heart, I knew that was so wrong. Yet knowing that it was not right, did not really stop me from letting these things invade my thinking process. Until I heard someone do a talk on this passage. And when I heard it, it was as if it was the first time that it came to me. And when that happened, everything just clicked. And I would say na work talaga yon ng Holy Spirit. Yung passage na sinasabi ko is found in Matthew chapter 19, verses 1 to 12. And in this, we find that some Pharisees tried to put a trap on Jesus by asking Him a question about divorce. I know, that's not our topic, but stick with me. They asked if a man was allowed to divorce his wife for any sort of reason. And it was in Jesus' reply and yung naging interaction niya with His disciples, because afterwards that we find the gem that we are looking for. And ito yung reply ni Jesus Christ when asked kung bakit si Moses apparently allowed divorce. So this is how the New Living Translation puts it, beginning verse 8. Verse 8, Jesus replied, Moses permitted divorce only as a concession to your hard hearts, but it was not what God had originally intended. And I tell you this, whoever divorces his wife and marries someone else commits adultery, unless his wife has been unfaithful. Jesus' disciples then said to him, if this is the case, it is better not to marry. Not everyone can accept this statement, Jesus said, only those whom God helps. Some are born as eunuchs, some have been made eunuchs by others, and some choose not to marry for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let anyone accept this who can. Gusto ko basahin ulit sa inyo yung verse 12 now in the New International Version. Kasi feeling ko mas tumbok yung pagkakasabi nung last verse na yun doon eh. It says, "For there are eunuchs who were born that way, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. The one who can accept this should accept it." Boom! Mic drop, diba? Jesus wasn't even talking about singleness dito. He was talking primarily about divorce. Pero when I heard that, it hit a spot in my heart. And I felt like everything just clicked. So what do we see in verse 12 here? First of all, bago tayo magpunta doon, what we know of eunuchs, di ba, ay sila yung mga kinakastrate so that they won't be able to produce heirs, to produce children. But as we can see from this passage, Jesus differentiates between sorts of eunuchs, different sorts of eunuchs. We find that, number one, there are different reasons why people are deemed unfit to marry or unfit for marriage. Number one, there are those who are natural-born eunuchs, meaning they are biologically incapable of reproduction. And we can also put in this category those who do not have sexual desires. So another thing that we can see is that there are those who are forced to become eunuchs. So we can put here those who need to be castrated for various reasons. And in the past, that was usually because they needed to serve the king and his purposes. And number three, there are those who are eunuchs by choice. Meaning it isn't because they are biologically incapable or that they have no desire for marriage, but or forced to even, but they choose to live like eunuchs because they would like to serve the one true king and his kingdom. So that's one thing that we can see. Another thing is that Jesus is acutely aware of these things, and he brings these things into our attention. In a culture where marriage was the norm and it was really actually essential for survival, and it was something that was expected of mostly all people, he brings these conditions to light for them to consider the reality that not everybody who is unmarried is either incapable or forced, but that there are those who are being offered this valuable alternative to living in the kingdom, and they're willingly accepting it. And then the third thing that we see is this. It is a hard pill to swallow, but that those who are given singlehood and can accept it should. So again, Jesus doesn't minimize the implications of this root, but by bringing it to attention, by bringing it to light, he lifts up those who would consider this path. Again, those who are being offered singlehood and can accept it should. Yun yung makikita natin from the passage. Ang problema, malamang, for us, ang dating nung offer ay hindi talaga offer, kundi force. Maaring sinabi niyo na, but that isn't really my choice. Kung meron lang talagang dumating, na may provides Lord, I wouldn't consider this path. Or maybe, due to some events in your life, you cannot be open to the prospect of marriage at the moment. Kahit na sa totoo lang, yun talaga yung gusto niyong mangyari. But actually, hindi kayo ang problema. Well, not you lang or not you mainly. The problem is, we grew up in a society where marriage, sex, and family are the end-all and be-all in life. Kaya nga, actually, kahit hindi na according to God's design yung between a marriage na between a man and a woman, go na rin kasi parang your humanity is not complete if you're not in a relationship and if you're not having sex. And the church is not really exempt from this sort of thinking. Di ba nga, when people come up to us during gatherings, typically yung conversation mapupunta doon. When you go to youth events or young adult activities, hindi rin to mawawala sa usapan. Pagka nakinig tayo ng preaching or attend tayo ng seminar about relationships, usually ang topic is keeping our purity or being the right person or choosing the right mate, or kung about married people naman, usually advice about how to go about that sort of life. Pero walang masyado tungkol sa dealing with this issue. Really, the Jesus way. Kung marriage, sex, and having a family ang end all and be all ng buhay natin, then nag-fail si Jesus. Jesus lived his life as a perfect model of humanity for us. If consciously and unconsciously ganito yung standard natin, then ang ultimate model natin na si Jesus Christ ultimately failed. And kasama niya na nag-fail ay yung mga ilang tagasunod ni Kristo na faithful sa Kanya all throughout history, even some of the apostles and disciples. So, if hindi marriage, hindi sex, hindi having family ang end-all and be-all in life, then what is it? And I'll tell you what. Kapag binasa mo yung dulo ng Bible, yung Revelation, chapters 19 and 21, what you would see is that His church is Jesus' bride. Ikaw at ako yun. If you are part of God's family, then you are Jesus' bride. Hindi man natin maranasang makasal in this lifetime, ngayon sa earth, mararanasan natin yan in the eternity future. And the thing is, yung groom natin, binigyan niya tayo ng mandate. Yung king natin, binigyan niya tayo ng kautusan to make disciples of all nations. And we still have a lot to do to see that fully happen. Ang end-all and be-all ng buhay natin is to give God glory by making disciples of all nations, by completing the work that Jesus gave us to do. And as we make disciples, we will have more people to actively engage in His kingdom here on earth. Kumusta ka, kapatid? Let God's invitation speak to you individually. Do you sense that singlehood is something that is being offered to you at this point? If so, if nararamdaman mo yan, and may resistance sa puso mo, which I totally understand, I totally get, dalhin mo yan kay Lord. He knows you, and I believe that He will deal with your questions in time. Grieve, if you must, because the immediate fulfillment of that inherent and godly longing is lost. So, dalhin mo yan sa paanan niya. Hindi man yan masagot agad-agad, pero kapit ka lang. Kasi alam ko na mahal ka niya at hindi niya iiwanan ka sa ere sa mga tanong mo. Number 2, kung nararamdaman mo nga that singlehood is being offered to you right now, and tanggap mo na, then, kailangan mong paghandaan yung reality na yon. So, ask yourself these questions. Number 1, anong knowledge pa kaya ang kailangan kong makuha in order to work better in God's kingdom? Ano pa kayang attitude ang kailangang mamold sa akin? Ano pa kayang skills ang kailangan kong i-enhance or makuha so that I could serve God better in His kingdom? Ano pa kaya yung mga opportunities na kailangan ma-involve ako in order to be a better servant in God's kingdom? So reflect on these questions, and kapag nahanap mo na yung sagot sa mga tanong na yan, act on them immediately. Again, there is no shame in being single for the Lord. It may be a difficult, a rough road going there, but if Jesus is worth the pain of rejection, of loneliness, of vulnerability, and insert all of the other not so desirable things that singleness brings about, then it is totally and definitely worth it. And because we all understand that it is not going to be easy, you and I, let us build a community where we can give support to one another and where we can let others in on it as well. Lovingly, turuan natin yung ibang mga tao, most importantly, the next generation of Christ followers, that singleness is a gift worth considering and having. And sa inyo, na fellow Christians namin, who fall into any of the categories that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I hope and pray na yung lack of empathy na yon, yung teasing, condescension, contempt, yung insensitivity na yon towards singles, intended man o hindi, I pray that they be stopped right here and now. Panahon na po para ibahin natin ang usapan at ang attitude natin sa bagay na ito. It is time to create a safe and nurturing space for singles to know that they're not less valued because of their status, but that they are all the more valued because they can do a lot for the kingdom unencumbered. Yun lamang po. Salamat guys for listening. And I pray that God would give us the wisdom as we navigate this new reality.